Okay, welcome back everyone to the afternoon session of the Embodied Intelligence Conference 2023. So apologies for the slight technical hiccup there with the breakout rooms. That's something we will address for the sessions later this afternoon. But hopefully there were some interesting discussions and presentations in those breakout rooms. So just to follow on and to recap for those of you that weren't with us this morning, the breakout rooms are just closing, so we'll just wait for the last few people to join us. But welcome back to those of you who were with us this morning, and for those that weren't, we're just going to provide a quick recap on the discussions this morning and also the talks that were missed. And these are being actively processed and put up online, so please do visit the website to catch up on these. So firstly, just some very quick practical information. The talks, as I've said, will be recorded, and these are being putting on the website as soon as possible. So please do feel free to go and recap or watch those that you were not available or around to see. We will also, during these very big sessions, only allow speakers and chairs to unmute just to avoid anarchy in this very large Zoom session. So please do put your questions in the chat or also use Discord. So that way we can bring together questions and put those to our panelists. We also have Discord, as we had this morning. Please feel free to join this, where you can again ask questions, start some discussion, and also potentially engage with our speakers. If you have any technical issues as well, please again Discord or send us an email. Brilliant. So that's the practical information over with. So I just wanted to recap again quickly Famir's objectives that he proposed this morning, really to try and discuss what embodied intelligence is, why are we doing it, why now, and what are the impacts. And I think this morning we've already covered, I think, these three questions from lots of different aspects and dimensions. And this is really interesting. But in addition to these questions, we also want to try and develop an international interdisciplinary community, plan steps for collaboration, and also to try and have some fun and to learn some new topics. So with this in mind, we had an action-packed morning, starting with the plenary from Shoji Takeuchi, and then the morning panel and talks and chairs led by Cecilia Lasacci, with a really interesting group of speakers touching on cognitive science, psychology, and also to robotics, looking at this intersection of what does it mean to be an embodied system and how is that perceived by humans. So the first talk from Shoji was really on biohybrid systems, looking at what is a biohybrid robot and why do we need these systems. So looking at how we can achieve attractive properties of both biological systems and artificial systems through the combination. This is obviously a really exciting and growing area. And very nicely, I think he presented these kind of biohybrid systems into 4 different groups. So we can have sensors, actuators, reactors, and processors. And within these, he really demonstrated some of his group's fantastic work in this area. So looking at actuators in terms of muscle tissues, showing the need for alignment and morphology of different muscle fibers to achieve significant and effective contraction. And also he actually in the Q&A discussed how they can selectively actuate these different muscle tissues through an electrical field. And then now working, I think, to show functional robots, which I think will hopefully be work that's appearing on the horizon very soon, which is exciting. There's also this lovely and really interesting demonstration of actually culturing skin onto an artificial finger and looking at the properties and the epidermal-like nature of this skin and what this could offer to robots. And a slightly tangential but very interesting also idea was this ability to fabricate food or to 3D culture tissue cells to generate meat, and how even though they have this replication of cells, it doesn't really taste like beef. So I think that's an interesting idea of embodiment. What does it mean to embody something in terms of replicating the cells, but then our perception of it is not the same. And finally, also touching on sensors and this really interesting idea of using biosensors and that membrane proteins really offer us fantastic capabilities, potentially even to detect indicators of cancer in human breast samples. And there was this really interesting future vision of combining all these different 4 groups into a single system to show a biohybrid humanoid robot. And one thing I also took away from this was the really wide range of different applications and use cases. These biohybrid robots can really make an impact in, be it from medical, food, biology, into addition to robotics. And I thought this really resonated quite well actually with Cecilia's introduction, where she spoke about the need for robots or software robots or embodied intelligence to show societal good and so show societal impact. So Cecilia's talk was really interesting because it started with a recap on 2021, where she presented both the paper in our proceedings, but also a really nice talk on the joys and sorrows of embodied intelligence, kind of focusing on 3 areas. This idea that embodied intelligence often delivers systems that have a very small ecological niche. So how do we expand beyond this? We can show control simplification, but how also do we get diversity? And also how do we develop more complex design? And building upon that kind of temporal development, the next question Cecilia posed was, how do we therefore design systems that systematically exploit and embody and show embodied intelligence? And based on this very interesting Nature Review Physics article that Cecilia has led and published, she presented this one equation for modeling embodied intelligence, which presents and starts to answer some of these questions. But looking forwards, there was this very interesting analogy Cecilia made to the Apollo years. So the Apollo mission and why it was so successful, and looking at the rapid advent of soft robotics, but to make continued and sustained impact. Her hypothesis, we need to show societal impact to avoid decay of this field. And she also touched on how perhaps greener robots and the ability to offer computational efficiency energetically could help from this. So a main kind of message I took away from it is EI is a major lesson that we can take from nature and we can learn from nature. And that also we need to look at how we can show societal impact to sustain and grow this field. So the following 3 talks were then more from the cognitive science and psychology direction. So Tetsushi Nonaka had this very interesting talk on the reciprocity between the actor and the environment, starting from Gibson's idea and concept that control lies in the animal environment system, and that we have this concept that behavior is regular but without being regulated. And he touched on 3 kind of examples of reciprocity between the actor and the environment, and showing some examples of nature or also kind of human experiments of how flexibility between the actor environment is important, and that coupling needs to be strong. How we need to explore the rich structure of the environment, and also the medium from this reciprocity is very important. And so it's really nice to get this psychological point of view and this psychologist's perspective and embodiment. And this led very nicely to the talk from Rachel Jack, looking at how can we equip artificial agents with facial expressions using through the lens of psychological science. Really highlighting that facial expressions are so important for everyday social signals, and that artificial agents need to have the social intelligence such that receivers or humans in the environment can also understand their intention and emotions. And that current facial expressions are perhaps not culturally universal, they're not naturally dynamic, or express a wide range of signals. So she's presented some really interesting work looking at developing data-driven methods for modeling or even generatively creating facial expressions for artificial systems. So creating, I think she had this really nice term, a rule book that we might use as humans for expressing facial expressions, but creating this rule book for artificial agents. And the last talk we had in this session was from Tom, looking at social cognition and human-robot interaction, looking at how do humans interpret robots. And I think he posed this really interesting idea based upon this concept of the symbol grounding problem, which has been, as Tom stated, solved in a technical sense. But this can lead perhaps to an observer's grounded problem, where the observer's interpretation expectation is grounded on their previous experience. And is this a problem that we can seek to solve, or is it actually insolvable? Because how do we obtain this embodied experience? And leading from this, and at the end, he presented these kind of ideas of 2 ways of approaching embodiment in HRI. Should we try and make robots human-like, embody them with the fundamental capabilities of social interaction, because this is at humans, what we're good at dealing with, what we expect. But equally, this idea of let's face the facts. There are many ways perhaps in robot bodies are not going to be able to be human-like. So should we not try and confuse people with a similarity? So this led to a lot of discussions regarding uncanny valley and why both the appearance and the embodiment of different robots changes our perception in terms of how friendly they are, how we interact with them. And this discussion really built upon the diversity of our different speakers. So this was a really interesting first session to start the conference with, and leads very nicely on to the second session of the day, where we have an additional 2 plenary talks, and also we have a short panel session with another 5 additional speakers. And to run and manage this session, it's my pleasure to introduce Kirsten Peterson from Cornell, who has very kindly agreed to join us in hosting this afternoon session to introduce the speakers and lead the panel discussions and end of day discussions. So Kirsten, thank you so much for joining, and I will hand over you to lead this session.